On February 12, 1771, the King of Sweden sat down for dinner and never stood up again. Not because of assassination, not because of poison, not because of some dramatic palace coup. Adolf Frederick, the reigning monarch of one of Europe's great powers, ate himself to death in a single sitting. 14 servings of semla, a cream-filled Swedish pastry, stacked on top of a meal that was already obscene. And to this day, Swedish schoolchildren learn about him not for his policies, not for his wars, not for his diplomacy, but as the king who ate himself to death. But here's what makes this story so much stranger than a man with no self-control at a dessert table. This death wasn't really about food at all. It was the final domino in a chain that started decades earlier, when a group of politicians made one calculated decision. They chose a king specifically because they thought he was too weak to matter. Let's rewind to 1743. Sweden is in trouble. The previous king, Frederick I, is old, childless, and fading. The country needs an heir, and the Swedish parliament, called the Riksdag, sees an opportunity. See, Sweden at this point is deep into what historians call the Age of Liberty. It sounds nice. It was not nice, at least not if you were the king. Starting in 1719, after the death of the warrior king Charles XII, Sweden's parliament had systematically dismantled royal power. The king couldn't declare war, couldn't make peace, couldn't appoint officials, couldn't even sign documents without parliamentary approval. The monarchy had been hollowed out into a rubber stamp with a crown on top. So when it came time to pick a new heir, the Riksdag didn't want a strong leader. They wanted a puppet. And they found one in Adolf Frederick, a minor German prince from the house of Holstein-Gottorp. He was pleasant, he was agreeable, he had no powerful faction behind him. He was, by all accounts, a genuinely kind man who enjoyed gardening, making snuff boxes as a hobby, and, crucially, had absolutely no interest in political confrontation. Perfect. The Riksdag installed him as crown prince in 1743, and when Frederick I finally died in 1751, Adolf Frederick became king. A king in name, a figurine on a shelf in practice. Now you might think being a powerless king would at least be comfortable. Golden cage, sure, but still golden, right? Not exactly. The Riksdag didn't just limit Adolf Frederick's power, they actively humiliated him. At one point, when the king refused to sign certain documents in protest, Parliament literally had a name stamp made, a rubber stamp with his signature on it. They told him, essentially, we don't need your hand, we don't even need you in the room. A block of wood with your name carved into it does your job just as well. Let that sink in. The Parliament of Sweden told their king to his face that he was replaceable by an office supply. Adolf Frederick reportedly wept. He tried occasionally to push back. In 1756, he even threatened to abdicate unless Parliament restored some of his authority. The Riksdag's response was essentially, go ahead. They called his bluff, and he folded. He stayed on the throne, if you could call it that, and sank deeper into the only domain where no one could overrule him. But Adolf Frederick wasn't the only royal chafing under these chains. His wife, Queen Louisa Ulrika, was a completely different animal. She was the sister of Frederick the Great of Prussia, one of the most formidable military minds in European history, and she had inherited the family's ambition, if not the army. Louisa Ulrika despised the Riksdag, she schemed, she recruited sympathetic nobles. And in 1756, she orchestrated an actual coup attempt to restore royal authority by force. It failed, spectacularly. The plot was discovered before it could be executed. Several of the conspirators were arrested and beheaded. Louisa Ulrika was publicly disgraced, forced to appear before Parliament and endure their condemnation. Adolf Frederick, though not directly involved, was tainted by association. Whatever shred of dignity or respect he'd managed to hold on to evaporated. The message from the Riksdag was clear and brutal. You are not just powerless, you are watched, you are surrounded, and if you try anything, we will take even the illusion of kingship from you. After 1756, something broke in Adolf Frederick. The mild-mannered man who liked gardening and making snuff boxes retreated further into the one arena of sovereignty he had left, the dinner table. And that brings us to February 12th, 1771, the meal that killed a king. Now, when people hear he ate 14 servings of dessert, they picture a man just shoveling pastries into his mouth like some kind of cartoon character. The reality is both more dignified and somehow worse. The meal began with a full spread: lobster, caviar, sauerkraut, kippers, smoked herring, all washed down with champagne. This alone would be a substantial feast. But it was just the opening act. Then came the semla. For those unfamiliar, a semla is a traditional Swedish pastry. A cardamom-spiced wheat bun, hollowed out, filled with almond paste and whipped cream, with the top placed back on like a little lid. They're served during the weeks before Lent, and they are rich, decadent. 1 is satisfying, 2 is indulgent, 3 is pushing it. Adolf Frederick ate 14, and he didn't eat them plain. He had them served in bowls of hot milk the traditional way, called hetväg, which essentially turns each serving into a warm, creamy, dense soup of bread and almond paste and cream. 14 bowls, after lobster and caviar and champagne. His body simply could not process what he had done to it. He developed severe digestive distress, likely a combination of acute gastric dilation and possibly a ruptured stomach or fatal indigestion triggering a cardiovascular event. The exact medical cause is debated, but the outcome is not. Adolf Frederick, King of Sweden, died that night. He was 61 years old. He had reigned for 20 years and accomplished, in the eyes of history, almost nothing, except dying in the most memorable way a monarch possibly could. But here's where the chain of consequences takes a sharp turn that most people never hear about. Adolf Frederick's death put his son on the throne, Gustav III, and Gustav was not his father. Gustav was charismatic, cultured, and, most importantly, absolutely furious about what the Riksdag had done to his family for decades. He watched his father be humiliated, stamped, sidelined, and broken. He watched his mother's coup fail and her dignity be stripped in public. And he learned from all of it. Just 1 year after taking the throne, in August of 1772, Gustav III launched his own coup. But unlike his mother's clumsy conspiracy, Gustav's was surgical. He rallied the military, seized key buildings in Stockholm, and forced the Riksdag to accept a new constitution that restored significant royal power, all in a matter of days, virtually without bloodshed. The age of liberty was over. Just like that. The same parliament that had turned a king into a rubber stamp was now answering to a king who ruled with real authority. And it all traced back, link by link, to a chain of decisions. A parliament chose a weak king on purpose. They crushed him. They humiliated his wife. They broke his spirit. He retreated into excess. He ate 14 servings of semla and died. And the son who watched all of it happen decided that this would never, ever happen again, and reshaped Sweden because of it. A pastry didn't just kill a king, it redrew the political map of Scandinavia. So here's what I want you to fight about in the comments. Was Adolf Frederick's death really just gluttony? A man with no discipline? Or was it something closer to a slow, quiet act of self-destruction by a man who'd had every other form of agency stripped away from him? Was the feast a lack of willpower, or was it the only rebellion he had left? Tell me what you think, and if stories like this, the weird, human, gloriously stupid moments that actually changed history, are the kind of thing you want more of, subscribing is the single best way to make sure you don't miss the next one.